Good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. And you know what? It's amazing how the wheel turns. Here in Australia, we have a politician who was once the leader of the coalition in opposition to the government, the Labour Party. His name is Alexander Downer. And I always used to call him euphemistically as Twinkle Toes. And why did I call him Twinkle Toes? Because he always seemed to be dancing to the tune. You know, he's one of these little guys who's a bit of an airy-fairy sort of fella. You know what I mean? You wonder which side of the line he is. But anyway, look, apparently he's straight and he's married and he's got kids and so on. But he comes from South Australia, and that says enough. I get you right into the politics of Australia now. Anyway, as a Queenslander, former Foreign Minister and Ambassador to Britain, Alexander Downer told a European audience that migrants in Australia were living Bantustan-style lives in separate ghettos. Wow. I wonder what the South African Human Rights Commission would do with that one. We might have to send Twinkle Toes over to South Africa to see how they respond to that. Let me continue with the story. In the speech to a Hungarian migration summit in March, which flew under the radar in Australia at the time, Mr. Downer also took aim at refugees he said were undermining the whole system by demanding permanent resident status rather than temporary protection. Mr. Downer's lecture to the Matthias Corvinus Collegium in Budapest strongly commended integration of migrants rather than letting them live in what he called Bantustan-style life, a reference to the segregated black settlements of apartheid South Africa. If you take people as migrants, you want to make sure they integrate, he said. Now, it's very interesting that he's actually saying this because, look, I used to be the webmaster for the One Nation Party, which was back in the 1990s seen as an extreme right nationalistic party run by a woman called Pauline Hanson. And just to be clear, I'm not in politics in Australia at all. I'm just trying to help South Africans. I'm totally out of politics, okay? Except for my friend Fraser Anning, who's rooting for South Africans. That's about as far as my political involvement goes in Australia. But getting back to this, here we have this Alexander Downer, Twinkle Toes, saying, I don't really agree with the liberal left who argue that in Australia we should change the culture of our country to accommodate immigrants. I think, on the other hand, migrants who wish to come to our country should endeavour to integrate into our community, not set up separate ghettos. Now, who can argue with that? Look what's happening in Europe. The whole place is just going... As we had that discussion with Francois a couple of days ago now, and I raised the point, I said, is South Africa like showing the way with what's going to happen in Europe in another generation? And the consensus was yes, because all these illegals are coming in to Europe. They're not coming into Australia, by the way. We people, because we're in Ireland, we're pretty secure. And we've tightened up on migration very strongly. But the trouble is, it's impacting on people who actually can culturally mix and integrate with the Australians, which is largely the minority groups in South Africa, which are basically at the receiving end of the crap that's going on around the world when it comes to these different groups going into areas they shouldn't go and not assimilating. Anyway, let's get back to what Downer says. Mr. Downer said Australia had an obligation to protect refugees, but only temporarily, while they fled persecution. He told his Budapest audience when they're finished, they should be peacefully returned home. That is a world of difference between someone who migrates to our country and someone who we protect as a refugee. These people are not looking for just protection. These people are looking to migrate, and they're looking to migrate to the country they want to go to. They get protection in all sorts of other countries on their way to your country, but no, we're going to let them in and become migrants. This is, of course, undermining the whole system. Mr. Dana spoke at the MCC's Budapest Summit on migration alongside other Australians, including Tony Abbott's former International Affairs Advisor, Mark Higgie, and University of Queensland Law Professor James Allen. Ultra-conservative Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban also addressed the conference, as did the former French President Nicolas Sarkozy and former Czech President Václav Klaus. Now, just in conclusion, all right, look, I'm a Donald Trump supporter, okay? I think that Trump is trying to do the right thing to get people back into the system, because I think the system has been totally destroyed by people like Soros and the Open Societies Foundation, and that's why you've got this chaos going on in Europe. But Alexander Dana, Twinkle Toes, he is a very... He was born with a silver spoon in his cup, okay? He had everything he needed. His father was a politician in Australia, and the only reason he ever got to where he did in politics in Australia back in the past was because of his father. I mean, there's something missing upstairs with Alexander. You know, you can tell it. But anyway, look, is he a racist for suggesting that what's happening in Australia when it comes to these migrant groups who form their own little cliques are setting up the equivalent of Bantustans, like in South Africa? That's a very interesting question. But you see, this is where perception comes into things, because what we have, for example, on YouTube is a situation where you get moderators who get a report or a complaint, and their perception is different to your understanding of things. And it might be a subject you know an awful lot about, but because they have the final say, they have the ability to put a strike on your video, which can actually threaten the whole channel. This is how crazy the internet has become. And I know I've slightly gone off topic here, but it's very related, because this is how news is distorted on the internet by the major carriers like Google and YouTube. And you know, in China now they have the social credit system, where if you do something the state doesn't like, they start taking points off your social credit. And if you get below a certain value, you can't use a credit card. If you get below another value, you can't travel. It's like putting you into a prison-like environment. And what's happening in the communication area, like with Google and all these other major organizations like Facebook and YouTube, is if you don't follow their narrative, which is starting to sound like CNN, BBC, and the major media, you kind of get penalized. Think about it. But getting back to the main story here, Alexander Dana, Twinkle Toes, suggesting that the migrant populations that are coming into Australia from places like Sudan and Afghanistan and all these weird, wonderful places are forming Bantustans in Australia. It's the first time I've heard that. All right, guys, please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. Ring the bell for the updates. Please like this video. Please share this video. And above all, stay safe.